Mark Meckler Show.
Hey everyone, this is Mark Meckler, and this is part of my series of interviews. You know, we do politics generally, but I think it's really important that you pay attention to people and other events around the world, and I like to bring people to you that you might not be hearing from. So today my guest is NAOMI SEIBT, and she is a 19-year-old YouTube personality, and some people refer to her as a climate change skeptic. I know she likes to be referred to, and I agree, as a climate change realist. So in an era when Greta Thunberg gets endless media attention, NAOMI's been described as the Anti-Greta. I know she doesn't like that either. We're going to talk a little bit about that. She lives in Münster, Germany, graduated in 2017 from the elite St. Moritz Catholic High School. She works with the Heartland Institute in the United States, reaching out to young people around the world. So NAOMI, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show. And wow, you've really done your research on me.
I've spent some time with you. I already feel like I know you a little bit. So let's dig in and start with today. We'll back up and get into your history a little bit, but I want people to understand who you are. You've become an internationally famous YouTube star around the issue of climate change, and more specifically, what you and I refer to as climate realism. You're really well known in the US and frankly all around the world. So how did that happen? Describe how this came to be.
A lot of coincidences in a row. I've been interested in political philosophy for many years now. It started in 2015 with the migration crisis, and I became kind of a political skeptic and a libertarian from looking into the values of free speech, of liberty, economic liberty. And for the first time, I realized that there was kind of one mainstream narrative out there that's being taught at schools and that I was taught at school. And I thought it was very interesting that I had always been told at school to question everything and to be a skeptic, but at the same time, there were many viewpoints that we weren't even discussing anymore. And then I looked into different kinds of political topics. It took me a couple of years to look into things like socialism versus capitalism, the importance of free markets, feminism. And then at the beginning of 2019, I finally also started questioning climate change, because climate change to me was one of those topics where I thought this might be the one topic that I'm not being lied to about, because every scientist seems to agree that climate change is real and it's man-made and it's oh so destructive. But yeah, then once I did my own research and once I really looked into the studies and listened to what actual scientists had to say, because here's the main problem. No scientists are really talking about the core science of climate change anymore. Everyone just seems to be talking about what can we do about climate change, and how do we reduce our CO2 emissions? How do we make sure that we don't drive our cars, that we don't consume animal products, that we don't that we just live a very primitive lifestyle again and switch over to alternative energy sources that are not reliable in the long run and not cheap and not sustainable. So those are just a bunch of lies, to be honest. And then I peeled back each layer of the propaganda. I uncovered a lot of the lies, claims by the IPCC. What are they really based on? It's just climate models and it's not true science. And so if I want to stay a scientific skeptic, which is a standard that is very important to me, then I have to be a climate realist.
So you went from somebody who is researching the issue, and now you're on the international stage. How did that transition take place? How did you become known on this issue?
Well, I started producing YouTube videos in May 2019, and those videos were mostly just about a bunch of different topics about the values of freedom and politics, migration crisis, feminism, those topics. And I was still in the middle of doing my research on climate change, because I thought that if I want to publish something about this, if I want to make a statement on climate change, then I really need to be sure that I know what I'm talking about, because if I make a mistake, then everybody will hate me for trying to destroy the planet, for being a narcissist, because I don't want to pay high taxes. So I really needed to make sure that I know what I'm talking about, because I don't want to destroy the planet, and I'm not anti-nature, I am not anti-environmentalism at all. And I do think that we can take a sensible approach to environmentalism. But then in summer 2019, I had finally come to the point where I thought, okay, now I've got enough research, enough studies compiled to produce some kind of video on this topic, and that's what I did. And I uploaded it on my channel, and it became very popular. It is a German video though, and I don't think it has subtitles at this point. I should probably provide English subtitles in the future. Um, and it got almost 200,000 views. Then it was taken down by YouTube immediately, almost. And we had to send a letter to them, a very strong worded letter. My mother is an excellent lawyer, and they re-uploaded it. But the only reason that they gave us was that basically it was a conspiracy theory video, because it was not slanderous. I was not being offensive in the video. It was purely scientific, and I was just asking some questions. I was just being critical of the climate science, science in quotation marks, that's being put out there in the mainstream. And then somebody from a German organization, a climate skeptic, climate realism organization called IKE, saw my video, and he sent me a message on Facebook and asked me, would you like to come to our climate skeptic conference in November in Munich? And I came, and I met Lord Christopher Monckton, who was one of the speakers there, and I was just fascinated by his excellent speech and by his mannerisms, by the way he talks in general, the way he behaves around people, and he's just a very inspiring person to me. And so I just approached him, and we talked a lot about all kinds of different topics, and a lot about the science as well, and about my struggles with trying to find my purpose in the world, because I tried to study economics at university, I tried to study psychology, and nothing could really fulfill me, because I have so many different interests and passions, and I don't want to focus on one thing. And I also had to experience that university is very one-sided in many ways. That was very depressing to me for a long time. And so Lord Christopher Monckton introduced me to James Taylor, and he also asked me, would you like to give a little speech at the end of the conference? Just 5 minutes, talk about what you liked about it, what you think about the protests, Antifa protesting outside. And I did that very spontaneously. So it was kind of a challenge to me. I wanted to find out, is she good at public speaking? And does she really know what she's talking about? And so I did it, and I got very positive feedback. And James Taylor from the Heartland Institute saw it, and he asked me, would you like to come to Madrid 1 week later to our conference about climate realism, whilst COP25 was taking place in Madrid. And once again, I was asked, would you like to give a little speech at the end of the day? And it was a spontaneous decision again. I did not prepare a speech a long time beforehand. And that speech got almost 200,000 hits on YouTube, I think. And then they asked me, would you like to work with us? And for the first time, I could really see a purpose for myself. I could see, wow, I can actually do something that I love. I can get an opportunity to speak and do more research. I can get access to amazing sources on the scientific topics, and I can talk to people whom I really look up to. And that was fascinating and amazing to me. And so I'm really enjoying it now.
So some people call you, and I mentioned this, the anti-Greta Thunberg, and I know you don't like that title or that topic. Can you explain to me why that bothers you, and how would you prefer to be referred to?
Yes, like I said, the mainstream climate change narrative is very ideological and not based on science anymore. Maybe it never has been, I don't know. Um, but whenever I approach someone on the other side and I ask them about the science, they don't know what they are talking about. They just quote, they just use this quote, 97% of scientists agree that climate change is real. And that is ridiculous, because of course climate change is real, but that's not the main question that we ought to ask. And this study has been completely misconstrued anyway. I can talk about that later, but that's not the question right now. Yeah, what I don't like about the term Anti-Greta is that it reinforces this ideology behind Greta. Greta is being pushed out there as the symbol for climate change, kind of like the prophet for climate change. And the German media called me Anti-Greta in one of their articles, to kind of make me into this anti-Christ. And that I think is very damaging, very hurtful. And it reduces my main message of we ought to fight for freedom of speech and for more discussions in the realm of science. It reduces me to an evil narcissist on the other side who does not want to fight for climate justice. I think that's what they call it, on the side of the climate alarmists.
How would you define yourself contrary to Greta? I mean, I think you have an entirely different approach. Can you describe how you think your approach is different than her approach?
Yeah, well, I do really like the term climate realist. I am a climate realist, and my name is NAOMI SEIBT, and I am not anti-Greta. And if you want to talk about me, if you want to talk to me, then approach me as the person that I am, which is NAOMI SEIBT, a young girl, and I am learning each day. And I know that I I cannot I cannot say negative things about Greta at all, and I cannot say that it's wrong to listen to her as this climate change symbol, and at the same time, I'm here putting my propaganda out there and asking people to believe everything that I say. And that's not what I do. I emphasize all the time, and this is very important to me. I don't want you to follow me blindly, and I don't want you to just believe everything I say unconditionally, because this is about science and I want you to do your own research. When I say something on the topic of science, I will give you the studies, I will give you the sources, or I will explain something in simple terms that might make sense to you, and so that you can understand the research that I have done on the topic. But please don't just believe everything unconditionally that I say, because I'm not a scientist. And I do have some credibility. I do think so, because I really make sure that I check my sources very diligently. But like I said, I am not an ideological figure for the right wing or for the climate deniers. I'm just myself, and I want to promote more discussions again.
Have you ever had a chance to speak to Greta face to face? Is that something you would be interested in, maybe even publicly?
I would be very interested in that, both privately and publicly. Um, but no, I think it will be almost impossible to reach out to her. The Washington Post published an article about me a few weeks ago, just very recently. And at the end of the article, it says that they tried to reach out to Greta Thunberg and she did not want to comment. And I believe that she's being shielded from any kind of debate from the other side, and she is very uncomfortable when she is being challenged on her stance on climate change, when she gets scientific questions, because that's not what she's about. She has never been about the science. She doesn't know anything about the science, because she doesn't talk about it. I have never heard her say one word about the science. She only says that we must reduce CO2 emissions, that we must change our lives, that politicians must act right now. But she, just like everybody else, is speaking in loose terms. And so if I was to confront her, she would not be able to discuss with me, because there can't be a debate if there's only one side that is willing to really dig into the science. And yeah, so we could talk about what is effective activism, for example, but we're doing activism for completely different things.
I'll reach out to her people and let's see if we can get you both on the show. How would that be?
Oh, that would be amazing, and I would do it instantly. I would like to talk to her.
We will work on that. Let me ask you this question. If you could summarize for us your position on climate change or global warming or whatever they're calling it right now, so folks understand where you're coming from and how you back up your positions.
At first, I asked myself the question, what can CO2 emissions actually do? What does that even mean? What is CO2? Of course, I knew that it was a molecule, and I knew that it wasn't some kind of evil demon made in the chemistry lab. No, that's just not the case. And so I had to look at it um, not in such a biased way, which is what the media is doing, and that is not scientific. So I looked into the topic of greenhouse gases and what can CO2 actually do in a lab experiment. And it is true that CO2 emissions cause warming, but that is just a very modest, very small amount of warming. And then we have to look at the atmosphere. How much CO2 do we actually emit into the atmosphere? And we need to compare that to the other greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Most people don't even know that the main greenhouse gas in the atmosphere is water vapor and not CO2. CO2 emissions and then the amount of CO2 emissions that are man-made make up just a tiny fraction, less than 1% of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we really believe that that can have such a big impact on the climate, on nature, on the temperature, on warming at all. That is ridiculous. And then we can look into this further. And what are those claims made by the IPCC even based on? They're just based on climate models. So that means there is no scientific method behind what they say. They just have their computer models and they're having fun with it. They're just playing around with a couple of factors that they think will amplify the warming effect that you get from emitting CO2 into the atmosphere. And so what they say is, compared to the warming effect that you get from emitting CO2 into the air in the lab experiment, you get an amplification effect. The warming effect in the atmosphere is 4 times as strong as it would be in the lab experiment. And that is just based on those climate models, and it's completely overstated. The next problem is none of the predictions came true. So shouldn't we change our methods somehow? Shouldn't we look into this further, or maybe retract some statements about climate change? No, that's not happening. They still use the same very outdated models. They still don't factor in other feedback responses. They still don't factor in the sun. They recently admitted that they will have to factor in the sun in the future, but how are they supposed to do that? Climate and nature is way too complex to just model it in some way. We cannot accurately depict the atmosphere or the way that the universe works in a man-made model in a computer.
So you and I know that the models are flawed. I mean, that science has been exposed. Why do you think that people continue to pursue this agenda and pursue it with almost religious ferocity?
Because there is no scientific excitement behind it, and that's why I want to inspire, especially people my age, to become excited about the science behind climate change again. For most people, it is a way to virtue signal, and then there are also the people who are genuinely terrified, and they hear all those catastrophe predictions, and they believe we must do something right now. It doesn't matter anymore. We don't need to do more research into this because everybody seems to agree that climate change is real and man-made and it's horrible. And so why should we look into the science if all the scientists seem to agree anyway? That's the main problem, that the fear-mongering is shielding people from actually opening their eyes, because it's putting so much pressure on us. And that's why I want to prevent people from panicking, and I want them to start thinking again.
So if I could, I'd like to back up. You are very unusual. I've interviewed a lot of people. You're 19 years old. You seem to have very solid philosophical and political foundations. Obviously, that stuff comes from somewhere. And if you don't mind, I'd like to dig in a little bit with you. Can you tell me about where you were raised and how you were raised? Tell me about your parents and your family, if you would.
I was raised by the best single mother that anyone could ever hope for. My mother is basically my best friend. She is a lawyer for medical law, so she doesn't do anything in the field of science, and all of my scientific research comes from myself. I teach everything myself when it comes to looking into studies and all of that. But she raised me in a very liberal way. She always gave me the freedom to question myself and to question her, and she would always challenge me on my views. And when I produced something, when I showed her a picture, when I made a drawing of something, she would always be very harsh and honest and tell me honestly if she didn't like what I was doing. And she would tell me, well, to be honest, I'm not very impressed by what you did there. This drawing is not as fantastic as many of your other drawings, and I don't see a reason why I should praise you for something that I don't truly admire. And that might seem harsh, but really it taught me to become an honest person myself. And I really value her honesty towards me, because when she does praise me for something, I know that it comes from her heart, and that she really really means it, and so I can appreciate it so much more. And yeah, she taught me to always question everything, to always be honest. And she introduced me to a lot of good literature. um, she um, she introduced me, for example, to the amazing book Sophie's World, and that's how I got into philosophy.
I have to say, so that's a book. I'm really into philosophy. I'd never heard of Sophie's World. I watched an interview where you mentioned it. The host hadn't heard of it either. I thought, I've never heard of that. I need to read that book. So I bought it, and I haven't read it. I listened to it. It's fantastic. Every young person should listen to that book, in my opinion. And I would say, actually, if you're an adult and you're listening and you don't know a lot about the world of philosophy, even if you do, it's one of the best and I think most compelling. It's a novel, so it's a story, a compelling story about the world of philosophy. If you want to understand the world of philosophy from beginning to end, it's a great book. Can you talk a little bit about when did you read that book? Tell a little bit what that book's about and what it meant to you.
I read it in primary school, so I was very young, because I started going to school when I was 5 years old, and then I skipped first grade immediately. So I was 5 years old when I was in second grade, and then I think maybe in third grade I already started reading Sophie's World, and it kind of changed my life. It changed my perspective on many things, because I was always a bit of a nerd, and I didn't have many friends. Also because I was way younger than everybody else, and that was okay for me. I didn't struggle that much with it, because I liked being by myself. I liked reading. I had a huge passion for yeah, even back then, doing my research, experimenting with things. And yeah, this book Sophie's World, just first of all, it taught me so much about the philosophy, the history of philosophy as well. But that may sound like this book is just about it's just a very theory based book about philosophy, and that's not the case. um, the main exciting thing about the book is that it's it's so it's very compelling in a very emotional way. It really spoke to me, and it gives me the chills every time I read it. I get so excited when I get to the plot twist, and um, all these questions come up while you're reading it, and you don't understand so many things. And then at some point, it just makes sense. Everything falls into place like uh, a, a mesmerizing puzzle of so many details that you overlooked at
Can,
the beginning of the
can you
story.
briefly describe the plot of the book for our listeners?
Yes, so there's this girl, Sophie, and she lives a very normal life, I guess. And she is just a teenager, and one day she gets a letter. She finds a piece of paper that somebody apparently left at her home, and it asks, "Who are you?" So there's a question written on there, "Who are you?" And she gets the next one, "Where does the world even come from?" And for the first time, she's confronted with some very deep, very simple, but also very deep and profound questions about philosophy. And she starts becoming more philosophically interested, and then she receives more and more letters, and they become more detailed. She gets more questions, and then the person who sends her those letters introduces himself as her personal philosophy teacher. And she learns a lot about the history of philosophy through those letters, and then she tries to find out who's behind all of this. And lots of very strange things seem to be happening around her all of a sudden, and at first you don't really know what's going on, just very strange details happening every now and then. And like I said, at some point everything just falls into place, and you understand what's going on. And yeah, it doesn't distract from the story, though, that you don't understand everything immediately, because everything just seems to work somehow. There's an amazing flow in the story, and that's why I like it so much.
So you were 8 years old, 9 years old when you started reading this?
Yeah, maybe I can't say for sure, but probably, yeah, I must have been around 8 years old.
Well, so I want to make sure that my listeners understand. I wouldn't say this is the child's book for the average 9-year-old. So don't let that chase you away from this book. I listened to it. I found it really compelling. I'm a little bit older than that, so I highly recommend Sophie's World. You recommended it to me. Thank you for enriching my life with that. And it does tell me a little bit about who you are, that you were reading that kind of stuff when you were that young. So obviously you were very mature at a young age. You books were your friends. I can definitely relate to that as at a young age. And obviously that helps you relate to Sophie, who is going through this transformation at a fairly young age. So you get into school, you're going through school. You went to what seems to be a fairly elite high school. Can you tell me about your experience there?
Um, I think it wasn't that much of a very elite high school. Um, Not really, but I did have some friends. I That was a coincidence that I had some friends who were extremely intelligent as well, and so I had a very small crowd of people who could really relate to my passions for books, reading, writing good grades. I really loved being diligent and working hard and not going to parties. All of that kind of stuff never really interested me. But we did also have very different views, and at some point, we kind of our friendship seemed to fade away a little bit because there were so many political differences between our views. That is a bit unfortunate. Um, but I always made sure to basically do everything on my own, even at school. I did not have amazing opportunities uh, to to fully embrace all my passions. But what I did was I picked every opportunity that I could get. Like, for example, I took part in many science competitions at school. The biggest science competition there is in Germany, and I did that every single year. And then I wrote a paper in 11th grade that I was able to present for the Rotary competition. And yeah, I just used every speaking opportunity, um, every way I could get my voice out there. So really, I've been passionate about public speaking for a long time, and doing my research and sharing it with others, because I like speaking about topics in simple terms that are very complex.
So I have to ask you this question as an American. You speak better English than most kids I know your age here in America. So why? I mean, it's really extraordinary. You're able to talk not just conversationally, but about political subjects, scientific subjects. That's not an easy skill to master. How did you come to that?
Thank you so much. Well, in middle school, I became very obsessed with the language, and I and one of my friends, we just started texting each other in English entirely, and we watched movies in English. We read books in English. Many people are not aware that we have a very heavy movie dubbing culture in Germany, so it is completely strange to Germans to watch a movie in English. If there is a German version of it. We don't watch movies with subtitles. We really just watch a completely German movie, and I hated that because it completely changes the way you see a movie. It changes the acting, and the voice is such an important component of any movie. And yeah, like I said, I read so many books, and I always wanted to make sure to read them in their original language. And many books just are English by default.
Well, you've definitely mastered it, and you apparently have mastered a lot of subjects. At least you have a very coherent opinion on a lot of subjects. I'd like to bounce around a little bit if I could. I know you've spoken about and written about feminism. Can you describe your views on feminism?
The problem that I have with feminism is that feminists claim to be for equality between the sexes, and that's not what it's about. It's about elevating women because they see women as oppressed, and so they say we need to make women more important in society to reinstate some sort of balance between the sexes, and that's just ridiculous because the balance is already there. For example, they claim that women are paid less, but what are the reasons for that? Maybe it's just maybe it's just their own choice. Maybe they want to have children instead. And so what I really hate is how they portray women who choose to have children as less successful, basically, because they earn less money than many men. And success should not be determined by economic value. Uh, that to me is completely ridiculous, but it is the people on the left, at least in my estimation, who usually just focus on economic profit. So, yeah, that is one of the notions of feminism that I heavily dislike. And then also this notion that women can't be strong individuals themselves, that we need men to fight for us or that we need other women to fight for us to become stronger. No, I am a strong individual myself, and I don't rely on anyone else to promote me in some sort of way. And I get many benefits from being a young woman, from being a blonde girl as well. Men are literally holding the doors open for us. So you always have to look at any topic from both sides, and I don't like how feminism is so one-sided, and we don't need it anymore in this day and age.
Okay, let's jump from feminism to socialism versus capitalism. I've heard you talk about socialism and its links to totalitarianism historically. Give us a little bit of your views on that.
I have not just talked about socialism, I also wrote an entire bachelor thesis basically about it, between 60 and 70 pages in English, because I thought it was such an important topic. The name of the paper is A Deconstruction of Postmodern Socialism and Its Motives. And I wrote it in 2018 when I was 17. Um, and I wrote it for competition. So I was not at university, and I wrote it all on my own, by myself, not with a professor. But it was the competition was for young students who had written a bachelor or master thesis or something like that. And so I decided I've got some free time, so why not participate and write a bachelor thesis in 3 months?
You know that's
Um,
not normal, right? Just in your spare time, you're writing a
I
bachelor's
do, I
thesis
do,
for fun.
yeah, I do know that. Yeah, but that's just my passion. It really is. This is so important to me, and I love spreading my what I find out about these topics, because it just makes so much sense. At first, of course, I was one of the people who thought socialism. Oh, that means social, right? That means helping the poor. That means being a nice human being, and everybody who thinks that we shouldn't pay taxes and that we shouldn't help the poor is an evil person. But no, what this is really about is it's um, about force from the state versus freedom. That's what the debate should be about, or what it really is about at the core. And when I say I don't want people to pay taxes, and I don't agree with this social welfare state system. What I mean is, I don't want people to be forced to pay for others. I want people to be able to take responsibility for their actions again. I want people to live in a more voluntary relationship with each other, and I want them to donate voluntarily so that they can actually appreciate and understand what they are doing, because it is very important that we have a close relationship when we want to give something to somebody else. um, we all know the feeling of giving gifts to other people, how much it warms our own hearts when we help someone else. And so that gets lost when we just pay taxes, and the state takes a lot of the money for themselves, and then they redistribute it in some arbitrary way. That's not how a society should work, I believe.
So obviously you grew up in Germany. You're very aware of the political system in Germany as almost as I assume as long as you've been politically aware. Angela Merkel's been chancellor. Describe to me what you think of current politics in Germany and what do you think the future holds for Germany?
Yeah, it doesn't really give me a lot of hope right now. I don't see a very prosperous and hopeful future for Germany. Restriction of speech is becoming worse each day. I am experiencing it right now with my own social media accounts. They want to ban my YouTube channel entirely. They want to delete me. Yesterday I got a letter from the state basically telling me that I'm not allowed to talk about climate change anymore and that I must take my videos down. We'll see what I do about that, because I will certainly not let them silence me, because otherwise they will just shut down my channel because I'm a conspiracy theorist, and that's not correct. Yeah, that's very sad. And on top of that, we've got the migration crisis. We're still letting in floods of migrants who are not refugees. It is just wrong to refer to them as refugees. We're not helping the people who are actually in danger and who are deserving of help. This is just arbitrary, uncontrolled migration, and the no borders policy is failing dramatically. It's making our country more dangerous. It's making us slaves of huge taxes, huge amounts of taxes, and yeah, it's not fun. And I will move out at some point.
Are you seeing any pushback against these trends in Germany? Is there any broader pushback among young people or older people? Is anybody stepping up other than you?
Yes, of course there is. There are people trying to fight against it, but I can see that many of them are losing hope as well. And a problem that I also see is that even the people, like, for example, we've got one opposition party, the Alternative for Germany, and I don't align myself with any party because I don't like any sort of collectivist approach, and I know that there are many people in every party, every group, who are just there to gain some fame, because they want to um, have a successful political career, and it's not really about profound values anymore in many cases. And so I do hope um, that we will find some more independent activists, but most of them are leaving the country now or have already left the country and are doing their work to fight for more freedom of speech and for less socialism in Germany from somewhere else in the world.
Yeah, and I am seeing this movement around the world. There's a free speech movement taking place. It's not only people on the right, it's intersecting with people on the left or libertarians, and it is taking place all over the world. But you're right, especially in Europe on the continent, it doesn't look very bright right now. I know you pay attention also to politics in the United States, especially the president, and I know you watched very avidly the presidential election in 2016. Can you talk a little bit from your perspective as a young person in Germany, the Trump phenomenon and what you've witnessed and how you see it from your perspective, but also how most of your peers see it?
In my entire grade at school, I was in grade 11 back then, I was the only person who took him seriously and who said from the start, this is going to be the next president and he knows what he's doing. And everybody else said to me, you're absolutely stupid because this guy doesn't know what he's talking about and he's just ridiculous. Um, he's a clown basically. And I said, no, he knows exactly what he's doing because um, the way he portrays himself and the way he attacks the media and lets the media attack him, um, that is part of his strategy, and it worked out in the end. And what do I think of him personally? Well, I support a lot of things that he has done, a lot of things that he stands for and has said. I like the fact that he is not a warmonger, as opposed to, for example, Obama, who got the Nobel Peace Prize, even though he was the one president who started, out of all presidents, I think he was the one who started most wars in the United States. And I think he's a very interesting figure. Not just the way he presents himself, but also the way he handles difficult situations, negotiations around the world. And I don't have to agree with everything that he says or does, but I would love to meet him one day and just find out more about him. I think he's an interesting individual.
And how would you say generally he's viewed among your peers now in Germany?
He is stupid, he is a racist and a narcissist, and yeah, that's the mainstream narrative. And why did the Americans vote for him? How could they?
So, in other words, what you're telling me is they're listening to the mainstream media narrative. They're not looking at it for themselves.
Oh yes, of course. There's not much thinking going on there, because it's more fun to go out and party and then just have a 5 minute political conversation with some friends once a month, maybe once a week at best. And yeah, it's not really about doing your research on political topics or on your political philosophy, because that is what I think is the most important thing and what many people misunderstand. You can't approach political topics before you know what you really stand for and what your core principles are, what your values are. I got into politics after I studied my own philosophy behind politics, after I came to the conclusion that I can probably identify with libertarianism the most, and my main values are claiming responsibility for your actions, being honest, and fighting for freedom. And only that way can you talk about policies and really understand what the implications of individual policies are.
Are there other books you talked about getting into the libertarian philosophy? Are there other books you would recommend that people read that were influential to you as you were coming up in politics?
Some books that are more um, current books, I guess, are from people whom I look up to in the social media sphere, like Stefan Molyneux's books and Jordan Peterson's books, and not just his new book, not just 12 Rules for Life, but also his older one that was about the roots of the Nazi ideology. That is an amazing book and so deep and so well researched, and he really spent, I think, 15 years writing this book and rewriting it over and over again. Um, and then for when it comes to economics, I read lots of people from the Austrian economics school, like Friedrich Hayek. I'm looking at a book from him in my room right now, and also Milton Friedman, of course, Ludwig von Mises. And I can also recommend for classical liberalism, John Locke, John Stuart Mill. I read those books. Um, then a book that I really loved, which is not a political book or philosophy book in any way. It's Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Everybody knows it. I think it's a fantastic book. Yeah, those are some more books that I can think of right now.
You just went down sort of the main line of libertarian philosophy right there. So that was
Yes.
fantastic. And obviously you've been reading those for a long time. Those form your foundation. And you said something that I think is really important, which is have your foundation first before you choose your political opinions, right?
Mm,
And so let me ask you a couple more personal questions before we close out, if that's okay. This is kind of a funny one, but my listeners always want to know this. I'm sitting here in the studio. I'm a dog lover. And in my studio with me always are my two Great Danes. So they are 175 pounds apiece, roughly, about 350 pounds of dog here with me in the studio. So people know all about Gideon and Levi. Do you have dogs? Do you like dogs? Do you have a favorite breed of dog?
Now I will disappoint you. I'm sorry. I don't own
Uh-oh.
a dog, and I have always been a cat person. I
Okay.
have a cat, and she was a stray cat, but I love her so much. She is basically a dog because she
Yeah.
is very um she always follows me around, and she is the most lovely cat I know. She was very shy at the beginning, but she yeah, she always wants to be around us, around my family and myself. And whenever we're on holiday, she will throw a tantrum at home and destroy things. And yeah.
That sounds very dog-like, and so it also sounds like the cat from Sophie's World. So there's a cat in the book, so that makes sense to me. Okay, so that's the pet thing, and tell me a little bit about other stuff you like to do. I read that you are or were a gymnast.
uh, I was not really a gymnast, but I got into uh, gym stuff myself. Wow, you really have done your research on me.
Yeah, I dig in for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed it for quite a long time. I went to the gym almost every single day, and I tried to become stronger and stronger each day. Then I had to take a break last year, unfortunately, for health reasons. But I would love to get into it back again in the future, because I've always wanted to be strong, and yeah, that's very important to me, that I can support myself and also support my family, my mother especially. I want to be physically and emotionally strong. Yeah, I love that. I love the feeling of lifting heavy things and showing people that I'm more than just this tiny blonde puppet, this doll.
That's great, and my listeners and my viewers know I'm really into the gym, so I can definitely relate to that. My whole family is that way. What other hobbies? Anything else you like to do for fun other than read and do politics and be a YouTube star?
Honestly, those are my main passions, and it may sound ridiculous to many people, but I love having discussions with the few friends that I do have all over the world. Well, I do have quite a lot of friends right now, but that only started when I really started becoming more public, and now I have friends all over the globe who stand by my side and who will support me no matter what. And I have discussions with my mother all the time, and that's amazing. So I love speaking to people, with people who are open minded, especially also people on the other side who are open minded and who um, want to want to expand their own mind in some way.
I know you were over here in the United States recently at CPAC. Do you have any plans to come back to the US?
I will come back in May for the Las Vegas conference by the Heartland Institute, whom I'm working with right now, and I will give a speech there. Apart from that, I don't know of any speaking opportunities yet. I give interviews every single day from the comfort of my own tiny room in Germany. I was on Sky News Australia this morning. I was on One American News Network last night. I will be in Australia somewhere on some TV show on Saturday again. So yeah, it's very fascinating how I can do so many things from home right now. With I'm here with my family, my wonderful mother, my wonderful sister, and that's amazing. But I love public speaking, and so if there are any speaking opportunities, come at me, invite me. I'm happy to debate people. That's fantastic as well, because I've got nothing to lose. Because if somebody else can convince me of their own standpoint on something, then I would say, "Wow, you did something there. You helped me become a more self-reflective person, and you helped me expand my own mind and find out something new." So I've got nothing to lose, because I don't want to fight anyone. I don't want to destroy anyone in a debate.
That's a great approach. We should definitely talk some more offline because I think there's a lot of opportunity for you when you come over here in May. And I think there's a lot of places we could get you invited to. Your voice is fresh and new, and we'd love to have you more here in the United States. So we'll close with that, except for tell people where they can follow you online.
You can follow me on YouTube. It's just my name. I started my channel with my normal name, NAOMI SEIBT. It's difficult for many Americans to spell. My name SEIBT is spelled SEIBT, so very strange way to spell it in German. Um, and then also I've got a Twitter account. There is also a fake Twitter account out there that has quite a lot of followers. But my real Twitter account is at Seibt Naomi. So it's just my name the other way around.
Okay. Any Instagram?
no, not yet. I don't know how to use Instagram, and so I'm lazy. I should probably start an Instagram in the future because many people ask me to, but not yet.
Okay, people could describe you as a lot of things, but not lazy. It's been great having you as a guest. My guest has been NAOMI SEIBT, incredible young woman from Germany making a difference on the international scene, doing lots of great work, talking to people, talking about issues that matter in a way that's young and fresh. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it so much. That was amazing.
This is the Mark Meckler Show. Mark Meckler leads a nationwide movement to call the first ever Article 5 Convention of States in American history. What's an Article 5 convention? It all started in 1787 at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, when the delegates found a fatal flaw in the Constitution. What if Congress were to obstruct the will of the people? The Assembly voted unanimously to include an important check against federal power, an Article 5 Convention of States to amend the Constitution in the face of a corrupt Congress. The day that the Founding Fathers foresaw is here. Career politicians in Congress have racked up over $23 trillion in debt, enriching themselves while bankrupting the future of our children and grandchildren. The Convention of States resolution calls for amendments in 3 distinct categories. Limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government. Impose fiscal restraints on Congress. Mandate term limits for all federal officials. It's the Constitution's secret weapon that Pelosi and McConnell don't want you to know about. Ready to help drain the swamp? Join the millions of American patriots supporting Convention of States. Sign the petition today at conventionofstates.com/podcast. We're about halfway to getting the 34 states necessary to call a convention and shake up D.C. once and for all. But Mark can only finish the job with your help. So go to conventionofstates.com/podcast. That's conventionofstates.com/podcast. You've been listening to The Mark Meckler Show. Download episodes on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, or wherever you get your podcasts.